So when it comes to Armor King, a lot of people like Armor King. A lot of people find Armor King to be a breath of fresh air, something that they were missing, and I just don't agree. Now, I'm not trying to say that if you like Armor King, you're wrong for liking Armor King or anything like that, but I think that a lot of what's going on with Armor King is bland, boring, uninteresting, uninspired, and also Armor King contains, in my opinion, some of the worst aspects of Tekken 8 character design. Now, I know that he doesn't have an install and he's not looping 50-50 stance mix-up and all of this other stuff, which is why a lot of people are praising Armor King's design, but to me, that's never really been the issue. I think that when it comes to characters having installs and stuff, that stuff actually is fine and not part of the problem, and Tekken players are fixating on the wrong aspects of what makes a character bad, a character design bad in this game. And despite the fact Armor King doesn't have that stuff, I think that Armor King is the worst DLC character to be released so far. Now, keep in mind when I'm saying that, I also said when Fakaram came out that he was the worst DLC character to be released thus far. Yes, worse than Ana. I actually don't mind Ana that much. So, what I'm going to say in my first impressions of Armor King is very different than what a lot of other people are saying. And you know, on one hand, yes, that's going to make some people watching this discount this and say, oh, he's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But frankly, for one, I don't care if people think that. And for two, I mainly want to offer a different perspective on the character in the game because I have a different perspective. And so starting out, you know, when it comes to Armor King and his weaknesses, he has two. And one of them is linearity. So, like, the thing with Armor King is even when I'm +5 here, so if I do back 1, and then I try doing 2-1, first hit's going the whiff, right? Back 1, forward, forward, 4. That's going the whiff. Here, forward, forward, 2. That's going the whiff. Here, forward, forward, neutral 2. That's going the whiff. If I'm at the right range, down, forward 1 also whiffs. So, you know, like, this is a genuine issue that Armor King has compared to most characters. And when it comes to tracking issues in Tekken 8, I don't think that tracking issues are really as big of a deal as they're made out to be. Like, I don't think that tracking is much of an issue with Lydia, with Heihachi, with Fakaram, and I think with Armor King it's the same thing. But when it comes to tracking, it requires a little bit more effort sometimes to be able to beat an opponent that's sidestepping. I think that's the case for Armor King. It's not that his moves are necessarily like super linear. He has options that are going to catch sidestep, and he has other options he can use as well normally in neutral that if he delays them are going to catch the opponent and still be pretty strong. But if Armor King is just throwing stuff out, like, you know how Jack throws out like down forward 2 and it's going to track you no matter what you do, Armor King doesn't really have that. He has to put in a lot more thought into his moves and his tracking, or else it's going to be very easy to sidestep him, which is adding an element to how he has to approach the neutral game, which is absolutely a weakness. Having to think about these things while you are playing in neutral and pay attention more to the opponent's sidestep, despite the fact that we have some options that can track sidestep easier, does make it a little bit more difficult to play the character. But I don't think that makes the character inherently significantly weaker. I think that Armor King players who play this character enough, like with other characters who are deemed linear, are going to find ways and naturally be able to beat sidestepping opponents with the options that they have. It's just going to take some time to figure that stuff out. Really, I think that Armor King's main problem is that he doesn't conform to Tekken 8's metagame. A lot of Tekken 8's metagame revolves around momentum. And what does momentum mean? It means that when you win the neutral situation, you can continue your offense indefinitely until the opponent interrupts you. Being able to constantly frame trap, force mix-ups, and create pressure situations that are going to gradually chip away your opponent is one of the things that I think defines a strong character in this game. As an example, and in fact, I'll actually switch characters to show you here, Nina is obviously considered one of the best characters in this game right now. Some would say that she is the best character in this game. And what are the reasons for that? In my opinion, one of the main reasons is continuous offense and momentum. Again, that's one of the things I think that defines a very strong character. And Nina, of course, has that with down forward 1-2, because, you know, down forward 1-2, we can go into here and then do low. We could do heat engager if I get him to stop blocking so I can demonstrate here. We can go into plus on block heat engager, which allows us to continue to loop this. We can do this, into this, and then cancel, and then off of the cancel, which we can also do off of this. We can also go here, and I apologize, I don't really play Nina. Let's do it off of this. Oh, right, sorry. We gotta do... See, this just shows how little I know Nina, but we can do something like that, which leaves us +1, and then we can jab, or then we can down forward 1. And you see how this just creates a situation when we can get looping infinite pressure. And we can also do it off of her lows, right? Because her low, +4 on hit, down forward 1-2, and then we can continue there. Or again, back to 2 into here, and then we can do it off of that. And you know, it's a similar thing with Ana as well, and I don't really need to explain this too much, but you know, another character with very similar things with Nina, down back 4 in the stance 1 +1, frame trap with jab, have jab string. And you know, like if you look at Brian as well, especially with Snake Eye, that is also a factor with him. So when we go back and we look at Armor King here, Armor King isn't really able to do that. And because of that, I think that's why a lot of people are saying that he's playing Tekken 7. And I think that this is an interesting and needed sort of character design in this game. A character who is trying to function without relying on momentum. And the reason why Armor King can't rely on momentum is because he doesn't have a lot of moves that are like plus on block and allow him to really mix the opponent. And also his stance, Bad Jaguar, because of that, doesn't really allow him to continue his offense either when he gets a hit. He doesn't have any moves that keep the opponent standing, and one thing that I say a lot is that it's better in this game generally to do less damage to the opponent but leave them standing rather than knock them down, just because of how continuous offense and momentum works in this game. With Armor King, when he does his mid out of stance, it knocks down. And because of that, the neutral situation kind of ends. We have a reset. Yes, Armor King gets a little bit of Oki that he can work off of, but for the most part, we're going back to a neutral state of game. When we do forward 4 neutral 2 and go in the stance here, and we do 4, Armor King is left at +3, but Armor King also doesn't have a lot of options that he can use to continue his offense, try counter hitting the opponent, and simultaneously allow him to continue on block. The closest thing he would have to something like this is his 4, which he can cancel on a block confirm, but it's -16 on block. Very risky and probably a lot of the time not worth it. And because of this, Armor King, when he does do like his 12 frame punish and then does a mix, the situation kind of ends. When Armor King does forward 4 neutral 2, go in the stance, does this, the situation kind of ends. Now, where this gets a little bit tricky is off of King's grab, or Armor King's grabs, of course, because if we do something like giant swing afterwards and the opponent swings in, then that's going to counter hit, and of course that means that the grab is probably going to work. And that can be particularly strong in cases like this, where if we can get a floor break, then we can get full combo. And of course Armor King also has core circle back 1+2, which will also break the wall, giving him that variety of options and making it a little bit scary to press into this stuff because of the counter hit grabs if there is a floor wall break. But what's important to remember as well is that Armor King's grab break frame data actually is pretty bad. You have a lot of characters like Jin and particularly Yoshimitsu that have great frame data on their breaks where it's like 0 on block, and it's to a point where they have an advantage even on break just because of the other tools that they have. Armor King, however, oh my god, Armor King, however, I set the wrong throw escape here. When you break one of Armor King's throws, -3 on block, right? Or on break, -6 on break, -3 on break, -7 on break, -5 on break. You see the pattern here? So when you break these throws from Armor King, he doesn't have a lot of recourse to be able to continue off that despite being a grappler. And again, that means that the situation at this point ends. And if he's not in heat, you can of course sidestep these grabs, and that makes it harder for Armor King to be able to apply this stuff. That, to me, is Armor King's biggest weakness. It's not his linearity. It's not, I don't really know what people are saying about Armor King, but to me, it's that he does not conform to Tekken 8's meta. And I think that when people talk about Armor King not having an install, I think that is partly a contributor to why this is the case. If you look at other characters that do have installs, so let's say we look at Asuka, or we look at Brian, or we look at Claudio, these characters are strong in their own right, but a lot of the reason why they're able to use this continuous pressure is because of the install. For example, when Asuka, outside of he loses the Naniwa Gusto state, she can no longer do while running 1+2. She can no longer do up forward 1-2. And up forward 1-2 in particular is one of the main ways that she applies her pressure, that she applies her offense, that she's able to loop it, because it's a fast 13 frame natural knockdown and wall splat move that's 0 on block. Now granted, you can power crush through the second hit, but most people don't even know that. The pros weren't doing that against Fergus and King Ray Jr. at Evo France this year. So the counterplay to this stuff is very difficult to understand. It's difficult to execute to a point where even the pros don't know a lot of this counterplay, and the pros don't do this stuff. And because of that, it makes the continuous offense even easier to perform. And that's where I think part of the misconception comes with Armor King, because when it comes to the installs, when it comes to the stances and a lot of the stuff that's in this game, there is clear counterplay to it. I have it has to be about half a dozen videos at this point on the main channel, link in the description, on just countering season 2 changes and the amount of knowledge that's required to have a full grasp on how to defend against every character in every situation in this game is ridiculous, to a point where I think it creates a big misconception on how defense is and how this game generally works, where we look at the characters that we were just talking about and we look at their installs and we say these characters are just 50-50 machines, they're bullshit, and all of this other stuff. And then we look at Armor King and he doesn't have that, and it feels like, oh, it's a breath of fresh air, he's playing Tekken 7. But in my mind, it's actually not the case, because Armor King's, the way that you defend against Armor King, promotes less interaction than these other characters do. There's less interaction when you're playing against Armor King. There's less back and forth than with Elisa, than with Asuka, than with Brian, than with Claudio, than with, I mean, even Azusana, than most of the characters that are in this game. The difference with Armor King is that because he's boring, bland, uninteresting, and uninspired, he's very one-dimensional and he's very easy to understand. I think with Armor King, a lot of people playing as and against Armor King are really experiencing what Tekken 8 feels like for the first time, because it's so simple to approach this matchup, to approach this character. And again, I think there's merit in that. I think that's a good thing. And when I'm saying how Armor King is boring, bland, uninspired, and uninteresting, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Characters like that should exist in this game. It's just not for me. But the thing is, when you play against other characters, again, like Asuka, what I'm talking about is she does up forward one, up forward one, up forward one, two, and you're actually power crushing through it. You know, that's part of the interaction. That's part of the defense. When you are playing against, like, let's say Leo. Let me just get Leo up here. Right, and Leo is doing one of his while running moves into plus on block 50-50 garbage, right? Leo goes here, and then Leo does, let me set them to block here, and then Leo does this, and then does something like, you know what, let's do, because it's faster, let's do the one here like that. 14 frame move. Let's have Leo run. Let me record that again. Let's have Leo run in here and then do like the 2, and then let's have Leo run in here and then do the 3+4 if the game would allow me. So we're sitting here with Leo and we're like, oh, we have to deal with this 50-50 garbage. It's just he does these mids, or he does these lows, and I just have to block. And one of the things with Leo is that you actually don't. You know, if as long as Leo doesn't do the low here, I can actually power crush through the mids. I can actually power crush through the mids and the highs. That's part of the counterplay, is that I'm supposed to be able to do this. And then if Leo does the low, then, and if I power crush through it, I'm not actually taking any extra damage. I mean, I'm taking the counter hit damage, but I'm not getting punished that hard for it. And then that means that what Leo's going to have to do, instead of just constantly forcing the 50-50, is now, oh, we have to actually play neutral, right? Now, because the opponent is power crushing me throughout all of this, and my low isn't giving me a ton of reward, now we actually have to like play more of the neutral game. I can't just take my +6 and run my mix, because if they keep power crushing, then I'm going to take a lot more damage. So that's when we don't go in the stance, we don't use up plus frames, and we sidestep. And there's examples of this everywhere in Tekken 8. But again, this is just so difficult to comprehend and understand with every character that I think a lot of people, again, including the pros, don't understand, see, or experience this aspect of the game. So they look at the characters in a very different light. And the way I see Armor King is much more egregious, actually, than a lot of these characters. But again, because it's so simple to approach, because he's such a simple matchup to understand, I think that a lot of people with Armor King and even Falkenraum are kind of experiencing how Tekken 8 actually functions for the first time. And I think that's a great thing in some ways, because I think it shows that under the surface, under everything that's going on with Tekken, there is a good game here. And I keep trying to say this over and over again. There's so much potential in Tekken 8. Tekken 8 has so much going for it, but yes, there are underlying problems that need to get fixed, but it's not nearly as bad as people say. Where I really have problems with Armor King is not only that stuff, because that, like, the gameplay stuff with Armor King is a lot more personal, right? A lot of the problems I have with Armor King really stem from the fact that Armor King is just not a character for me, as the title of the video is. Armor King, I like the characters that I like playing. Obviously, I'm a Lydia main, and there's just so much going on with this character. But before that, you know, I played Yoshi, I played Elisa, I like Xiao Yu. Like, these are the characters I like playing. Characters that have a ton of options, really high ceiling, super technical characters. And Armor King just isn't that. Armor King is very bare bones, and he's simple, and he's not really doing much. And I don't think that's what makes a character a Tekken 7 character. I don't think that character being bare bones and not having options makes a character a Tekken 7 character. But also keep in mind, I didn't like Tekken 7, so also take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I don't think that Armor King just doing like 2-1 into forward 4, or like 2-1 in the crouch dash 1, or 2-1 in the forward neutral 2 is particularly interesting and makes this character like better than other characters, because he's playing more like a Tekken 7 character, even though I think that the character, yes, doesn't conform to the metagame, and yes, makes him more like older, a character from an older game than a lot of other characters in Tekken 8. If you're looking for that, you know, maybe that's for you. But I just don't find it particularly interesting, and I don't think that's the entirety of what makes up a Tekken 7 character. Basically, all Armor King is doing, from what I've played him, and I've played a lot, I've tried to understand this character. I know a lot of people have been looking forward to him. I'm sure a lot of you that are watching this really like him, but really what it just comes down to is you play a lot of neutral, right? You win the neutral situation, you get big whiff punish off of forward 2-1, maybe you punish with 2-1, and then from there, all you're really doing is you're just like going into stance mix up, and then maybe you're doing a poke with like down 4-1, backing up, and now trying to win the neutral game again. And that it's just kind of that rinse and repeat. You're not, in my mind, you're not really playing a character. You're sort of playing like a function within the game. I don't know if that makes sense. It's hard to articulate how exactly I feel about Armor King, but I think that's the best way to describe it, and it just doesn't work for me. But then the other problem I have playing against Armor King too is not only is it very repetitive and it's a very boring character to play against. Like, again, I like playing these characters, and I also like playing against these characters. Like, I love playing against Xiao Yu. I think playing against Xiao Yu is really fun. I really like playing against Yoshi, and so playing against a character like Armor King is just snooze fest, especially when I'm like thinking about like playing against characters like Raven or Zafina. You know, like these characters I find it really enjoyable to play against. Playing against good Honor players I find fun because there's just so much going on with her. Armor King, I'm just not in it. But then the other problem I have is that a lot of what Armor King does is just stance 50-50, because that's sort of what this game comes down to. Even though there are a lot of ways to mitigate the 50-50, you have to have some way to be able to force a 50-50 situation to set up for one if the character is going to be good. Most characters in this game, the reason why this game is so balanced is simply because this game is very formulaic in that regard. But the thing is, with a lot of stance mix-ups, like I showed with Leo, if you're just going to throw it out there, there are ways to counter. There are ways to interact with the person on offense. In Armor King's case, not really. All of his moves that he does into stance are +8, and in the case of some of these moves like back 1-2, for example, you can very easily hit confirm it. And the problem with this is that there's really no interaction with Armor King when he goes into the stance, and this is the core issue that I have with Armor King. Again, very simple to understand the matchup, because everything that he does that goes into stance is +8. This is +8. This is +8. But the problem is, when Armor King is +8 here, you really don't have any sort of interaction that you can do if you are on defense. You just have to eat the stance mix-up 50-50. And even though Armor King isn't getting a lot out of that, I imagine the reason why there's really no interactions because Armor King isn't really able to convert off of those plus frames or the knockdown or whatever he gets off of the 50-50 he does in stance, but it just leads to a situation where it becomes what a lot of people say about this game, which isn't true, that it's just stance 50-50 mix-up bullshit. And it's really frustrating because a lot of people say this about most characters in the game, and I couldn't disagree more. Again, I have like half a dozen videos at this point on the main channel just breaking down how to deal with stances, what the interaction is, what your defensive options are. And with Armor King, there's just none. If he does this and goes into stance, if you try power crushing, this beats power crush. It also if I remember correctly, beats down jab because of down jab frames. So if I do, hold on, let me do this again. Actually, if I do this and I try down jabbing, I don't think this will work. Yep, if I down jab, like I can't do that. I can't power crush, so I'm just kind of forced to eat this. If I try sidestepping as well, which is how you're supposed to avoid the power crush when he's in heat, obviously can't do that either. If we go into here now, and that leads to a situation where we're kind of cut off of being able to do a lot of things. If we go into here and then we try doing the mid, I won't do the whole thing just to save the animation, but again, we don't have the frames because we're -8 to be able to step either direction. Obviously we can't down jab, and we also can't even oh no, sorry, we can power crush. I was about to say, I was pretty sure that we could. Yeah, we can power crush, but again, when the 1 being +1 on block exists, and then when we also have the 2, or not the 2, sorry, the 4, this just kind of leads to a situation where it's just, you know, it's all it boils down to is guess the 50-50 in stance. It's a very similar situation to Law's Den 3, where there's not really any counterplay. There's not much you can do. You just have to eat the mid or the low. And I think that lack of interaction between the attacker and defender is really boring, and it's a real shame that Armor King kind of devolves into this, where a lot of what he's doing is, it's like, okay, cool, we do back 1-2, go in the stance, do a mix-up, and then, you know, the other thing is that people will say, well, you have the choice to not go in the stance, but really this is an illusion of choice, because yeah, I mean, sure, we could do back 1-2 and then not go in the stance and then do like forward 4 neutral 2, but at that point, aren't we doing the same thing? You know, aren't we just doing the same thing at that point? And also, if we do this is a lot more telegraphed than if we do it out of stance. And on top of that, we're getting more damage out of the low in stance. We're obviously getting more damage out of the mid in stance. You know, 47 damage mid hit confirmable. So why would you ever not go into stance? Why would you ever not do the stance mix-up? And, you know, there are actually a couple of reasons. And it's mainly comes down to the mids. Because if you're going to go for the mid mix-up, and you want to not go into stance, then yeah, you can do this, and then you can do like, you know, this, or you can go here, or we can go like heat engager, forward 4, and you know, if we do this and then forward 2, if this ends up getting blocked, so let me set up the opponent to do this here. If we do this and then do this, you see how much pushback there is, so now we can still like play the neutral game, and we haven't necessarily just lost our turn, as opposed to if we do this, -7 right in the face. So that's sort of the merit of not going in the stance. But for the most part, unless the opponent is like low on HP, or you're really trying to play the neutral game, I don't see a lot of the point, especially again when Armor King doesn't have looping offense, which one of the pros with him in terms of the character design is that he's different from our Tekken 8 characters because of that, but one of the cons in how he works in Tekken 8's metagame, where because of that, you're really not incentivized to do this, because it's like, okay, let's say that you're playing against, again, like Ana, right? Let's say you're playing against Ana or Nina, and you do this, and then you do this, or you do this, and then you go here, and then it's like, okay, cool, you're -5, you can move around until Ana or Nina dash it into down 4, 1, 2, and now you're eating pressure for the rest of your life. And it's like, well, you know, you could have just went for the higher damage option and out of the stance, and it kind of leads to the same situation anyway, because there's not a whole hell of a lot else that Armor King can do. You know, I mean, again, other things as well, we could do like this, or we could do this, but at that point we're doing highs, and if they get ducked, we get launched. If they stand block, the low would have hit anyway, so why aren't we just doing the stance mix-up that's uninteractable? And, you know, that's sort of the core problem I have with Armor King. That's why he's not a character for me. That's why I don't particularly like him. And that's just, you know, my perspective from someone who isn't necessarily a huge fan of this character. So anyway, that's going to do it for me. I've been here long enough. Thank you very much for listening. Let me know what you think of Armor King down below. If you're enjoying the character, I'm really happy for you. For all of you Armor King fans, it seems like for the most part that he's been really well received. A lot of people like him. And so if you're an Armor King player, if you're liking him, I feel great for you. I feel really happy for you. I'm glad that you guys got a character that you actually enjoy and you like playing. So if you're liking him, let me know. If you're not liking him, let me know too. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. Take care. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And hey, if you like this video, I would appreciate if you like and subscribe for more content like this. And with the cards that are on screen right now, if you go over to that side of the screen, there should be an anti-Armor King guide right over there. And if there's not, it's gonna be uploaded within the next 24 hours. So subscribe to the main channel. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.